Breaking news this morning, former CNN host Don Lemon, yes, that Don Lemon, was taken into custody by federal authorities because of his involvement in the church protest just a couple of weeks ago. Here's the story. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's be clear about one thing right out of the gate. This is not about silencing journalism. It's about whether journalism is being used as a cover for something else entirely. And for those of you who know Don Lemon, you know that's certainly possible. So here's what happened. As you know, earlier this month, we had left-wing agitators storming City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was during a worship service Sunday morning. They disrupted the service. They shouted down congregants, and they turned a place of worship literally into a political circus. Don Lemon was there, not afterwards, not across the street. He followed the group. He live streamed the event. He entered the church, and he documented what even he later described as a clandestine mission. And that word is what matters. Lemon told viewers the First Amendment protects the freedom to protest, and that's true up to a point. What the First Amendment does not protect is invading a church. There's no protection for invading a church, disrupting religious worship, intimidating congregants, or interfering with people exercising their own constitutional rights. And that's where the legal trouble starts. So let's just kind of do a quick review here. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that Lemon and several others were arrested today in connection with the coordinated attack on the church. They were arrested earlier in the week. Charges haven't been fully detailed yet, but DOJ officials have pointed to potential violations of the FACE Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act, laws that, by the way, were designed specifically to protect civil rights and religious freedom. And here's the irony. The very people who claim to be defending civil liberties are now accused of trampling on them. Now, Lemon's attorney says this is an attack on the First Amendment, that Don Lemon was just doing journalism, 30 years in the business, shining light on the truth, holding power accountable. Okay, so let's talk about that. Journalism is not a magic cloak. It's not a hall pass. It's not a get out of jail free card if you knowingly embed yourself in a coordinated action designed to disrupt a lawful religious service. That's exactly is what happened. And look, we have the video to prove it. We have Don Lemon's own video to prove it. You may recall initially, Lemon claimed that he just happened to come by the protest. He had no part in the planning of it. We later found out that wasn't exactly the truth. We later found out that he had met with the group prior to storming the church, and he knew exactly what they were going to do. Now, even the DOJ civil rights chief, Harmeet Dillon, made this point crystal clear. Being a journalist does not shield you if you become part of the act itself. You tell me. You've seen some of the videos probably. Was Don Lemon part of the act? Was he part of the protest? Lemon's own video raises serious questions. He admits that he kind of knew what was going to happen. He drove to the church with the group. He entered before the agitators to get set up so he could video the whole thing. He told his crew not to step on church property while he walked in. Then, when chaos erupted, he told churchgoers, I'm a journalist. That's journalism. That's participation with a press badge, I guess. And let's be honest here. If this were a conservative journalist following a pro-life group into a church, a mosque, or a synagogue to disrupt services, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, every one of them would be screaming about extremism, threats to democracy, it's dangerous rhetoric. But because it's Don Lemon, suddenly this, quote, heroic truth-telling is okay. He gets a pass. Well, not so fast. Now Lemon is daring the DOJ to make him into the new Jimmy Kimmel, standing tall, defiant, playing the martyr. Here's the problem. This case isn't about Don Lemon's feelings. It's not even about his so-called journalism. It's about the rule of law. Attorney General Bondi put it very plainly. We do not tolerate attacks on places of worship, period, full stop. That standard applies to everyone, or it applies to no one. And that's the real issue here. For years, The left has insisted that no one's above the law. You've heard them say that. That institutions that they matter, that norms matter, that democracy is fragile. That's what they've been preaching. Well, this is what that looks like in practice. You don't get to claim press freedom while helping execute a coordinated disruption of a church service. You don't get to accuse others of extremism while justifying intimidation in the name of activism. That's exactly what they were trying to do to that church, calling out the pastor. Two of the ringleaders of this protest were arrested earlier in the week. They claim, well, we were just asking the pastor a question. As I said then, who interrupts a church service to ask a pastor a question unless you truly want to interrupt the service and make a point, make a statement? Don Lemon and the other ladies involved in this protest, if you want to call it that, they don't get to redefine the First Amendment every time accountability shows up. Now, Lemon and his supporters say this is selective enforcement. They're being targeted. They're being picked on. That the DOJ should be investigating other incidents instead. That this is a distraction, a waste of resources. That argument, I'm going to say, does not hold water. Two federal judges have already looked at this. One initially rejected the charges earlier this week. But that doesn't mean the conduct was lawful. It means prosecutors needed to tighten their case. Now they've acted. They've done just that. And we're seeing how the system works. Don Lemon's getting a front row seat of how the system works. One more thing, too, because this matters. This wasn't a protest on a sidewalk. This wasn't chanting outside of a government building. This was a church during worship with families, children inside, people exercising their own First Amendment right, religious freedom. That right is not secondary. It's not optional. It does not disappear because Don Lemon and his activists decide a pastor is politically inconvenient. That's what this all was about. They believe that the pastor is involved with ICE. Well, so what? You still can't walk in and disrupt the service. So here's the bottom line. Don Lemon is presumed innocent. He'll get his day in court, as he should. But journalism is not activism. Activism is not journalism. And when the two blur, especially inside a church, the law has every right to step in. The First Amendment protects a free press, yes. It also protects a free exercise of religion. It allows those people to go into their church and not have to worry about a Don Lemon and other protesters disrupting that church service.